What's going on, all, and welcome to a video where we are going to go over 10 mods that I think you should try out if you cannot wait for the Balatro update and you are looking to get some new Balatro content. But before we jump into it, I do want to make one thing clear. This is not a top 10 mods. This is not saying that any of the other mods are not fantastic. There are dozens and dozens of mods. If you go to the official Balatro Discord, they do a great job of having a whole channel dedicated to different mods that you can try out. There's discussions there. You can find them all and try them all, and I highly recommend checking that out for yourself. But I want to do a quick little video where I highlight 10 of my personal favorites, 10 that I really recommend, and we're going to break them down to 3 categories. There's utility mods, overhaul mods, and vanilla adjacent mods. So without further ado, let's jump into it. First, I'm going to start with utility mods, and we're going to start off with the Saturn Mod. This Saturn Mod was made for, you know, honestly, it felt like Dr. Spectred and I back when we were going after all these world records runs. I know DJ Nasty was one of the leads on the mod creation here. And we're going to start off with Saturn, which allows for stackable consumables, removes animations from scoring, and honestly, what I think is the most underrated feature of this mod, allowing for playing cards to be hid after you play them. So what I really don't like in the vanilla game, and it can especially get complicated when you're going after a high scoring run, is if you play a few cards, they will simply be grayed out when you look at remaining. What Saturn does is just, when you look at the remaining portion, they're just removed, so you know actually what is remaining, and if you do want to see your full deck, you can still click the full deck. I think the UX feature of having these grayed out can make it really hard to see what cards you actually have available. Saturn Mod fixes this. I also think Saturn Mod is simply, if you are going to go after these high scoring record runs, it is just absolutely needed, especially if you're using per KO and you have a huge stack of negative consumables. It becomes really hard to click on them. Or if you're sitting there using gold ticket and 50 re-triggers, it's going to take forever for that hand to score. This automatically scores it for you. So one of my favorite mods. And with that, let's just go back to back, hitting on 2 mods by DJ. We're going to also talk about Brainstorm. And Brainstorm is another mod that really I find useful when going after very hyper-specific challenges for myself. So this allows you to search for starts that you input the settings for. What I like to call this type of Balatro game is filtered unseated. So normally, if you want a very specific run, you're either gonna have to sit there and re-roll an absolute metric ton. It was taking, you know, myself 3 to 6 hours to find 1 per KO back when the game first came out, so we could go on a record run. Now, Brainstorm will search 1,000 starts per second, check if there's a per KO in that first Arcana pack, and just keep searching, and then it will find a seed for us. So, yes, it does give you an unfair advantage, and that's why I think when we're talking about world records and such, Brainstorm is kind of its own category of this filtered but unseeded. But I personally don't have a ton of fun playing seeded games, knowing what is going to happen next, or at least knowing that other people do and they're kind of trying to guide me in that direction. I like playing unseeded, but I also want kind of a crazy, ridiculous start to the seed, and Brainstorm is just absolutely perfect for that. It's also perfect not just for record runs, but doing these very specific challenges. Maybe you only want to play with high card and see how far you can get in a game. Well, to do that, you're not going to be able to beat the first blind. So maybe you want a very specific tag, and you can search for that specific tag with Brainstorm. So moving on to the 3rd mod on this list, it is Talisman by Math is Fun. I mean, Talisman is a very simple mod. It allows for the big number. So currently in Balatro, I believe E to the 308 is the highest you can go, which is something like 2 to the it's a very specific 2 to some other number power. Regardless, Math is Fun just takes that and blows the door off of it. You can basically score unlimited. I believe the highest theirs goes is like E to the 308. So now you're talking about 10 to the power of 10 to the power of E something, which is unfathomably large. You're talking about, I mean, numbers so big, there's nothing in the universe that can possibly equate to it, but you can get there with multiplication. So Math is Fun has built this, and it's really good with a couple mods we're going to talk about later, but it's still pretty fun with vanilla Balatro, because with Perkeo or with Baron and Mime or with Tribulate even, oftentimes you can score past Nan Inf, and Math is Fun lets you see that exact score that you're actually getting. So Talisman is pretty fun. I will say, quick note on Talisman is you have to start a run with it. If you try and add it middle of a run after you get Nan Inf, it will kind of break your save, so be careful with that. And the final utility mod we're going to talk about is Handy Balatro. So this is a mod I kept putting off downloading for some reason, but SleepyG11 has built us an incredible mod that just has a ton of shortcuts that, if you play Balatro often, are honestly pretty useful. For example, it allows for a click and drag mechanic on your cards. I remember the first time I saw Belenos Bear doing this on stream, I was like, I have to get this mod. It's going to make things so much faster. It allows for several shortcuts such as quick buying, quick selling, and a whole host of other options. And honestly, myself and I honestly think Belenos Bear and several others have just gotten the mod just for the click and dragging of your playing cards. That's such a nice quality of life feature that I find really useful. So these utility mods all, I think, just make the game slightly better, make this game slightly more playable. Balatro's honestly 10 out of 10 perfect, but that doesn't mean you can't get some nice UX and UI improvements, and I think all these utility mods add something for you to do. So let's now move on to the Overhaul Mods. Now this is the hefty category. We're going to start off with Math is Fun's Cyprtid Mod, and it almost feels like this was made to display the power of the Talisman Mod. So the Cyprtid Mod is a true complete overhaul of Balatro, and while all the vanilla stuff is still there, it adds basically ×2 the content when it comes to jokers, decks, different types of consumable cards. And really what Cyprtid is all about is breaking the game. There's these certain subset of jokers that are even more powerful than legendaries called exotic jokers. And using these exotic jokers and, you know, some of the other Cyprtid jokers, you can score, like I was mentioning, you know, E to the 100. If you've seen my Googleplex score video, we used Cyprtid to get that. So Cyprtid is really fun if you just want to have a silly Balatro run, if you want a bajillion dollars, if you want to score infinite, truly infinite, using the Talisman Mod amount of points, if you want to just do absolutely crazy things and push Balatro to its limit. I would argue Cyprtid is all about legitimately crashing Balatro. I don't think I've ever had a Cyprtid run that didn't end in Balatro crashing, but that's not really a knock, I think, on the mod itself. It's pushing Balatro to its limits, and it's not like it crashes right away. We're talking about like 8 hours into a run where I'm scoring so many points that the program simply cannot handle it anymore. But that's kind of the end point. That's when you know, okay, my Cyprtid run's over. I think it's a really fun mod. It's led to hours and hours of playability for me, and I highly recommend you check it out. Moving on to the next Overhaul mod, it is the Pokermon Mod. And this is a complete overhaul that adds Pokemon to the game. I believe the current iteration has all the Gen 1 and Gen 2 Pokemon, but I think the most interesting part of the Pokemon mod, as someone who's not even a Pokemon fan, is the evolving mechanic. So just like in Pokemon, you evolve these Pokemon jokers in Balatro by doing certain things, or using energy cards, or using these little power-up upgrade cards, while also doing other little runs. And what I think this adds is these little games inside the game of Balatro. Like, okay, I have a joker, and I now need to play 8 2-pairs to upgrade that joker, and then I need to play 12 2-pairs and then get a fire element card to upgrade it one more time to get to its most powerful form. And again, it creates this game inside the game that led to honestly kind of me coming back to Balatro. I had not been playing it a ton over the summer, got into the Pokermon mod, and then I got back into vanilla Balatro, and it was kind of the gateway drug, if you will, back into me playing Balatro every single day again. And I cannot recommend the mod enough. Again, I think the highest praise I can give it is someone who's not even a fan of Pokemon finds this mod beautiful. And I think, you know, arguably it can almost be in the vanilla adjacent category. It's clearly not, but at the same time, I think the idea of having evolving jokers is a great one. I would love to see local thunk explore it in Balatro maybe one day, or Balatro 2 if you will. I think it really adds a ton to the game, and it doesn't quite break the game. Although we had some game breaking runs, it definitely plays still difficult on gold stakers, still the right amount of challenging in the middle stakes, or you know, you could break it just enough on white stakes. So Pokemon mod, try it out, try the tons of Pokemon jokers. It'll give you hours of content. Moving on, Betmma Mods. So Betmma has several mods, but my favorite is the voucher packs, although I would recommend just getting all of them and playing them together. The vouchers were particularly fun, and while I would argue, you know, maybe slightly overpowered if we're going to talk about balancing, it still allowed for a challenging Balatro-like experience. And for me personally, the Betmma challenge of grabbing 100 vouchers in one run months ago was one of the most fun runs I've ever had playing Balatro. And I don't want to spoil too much, but you know, there's just vouchers for everything in the voucher pack, and that's something I really like about it, because the fact that you only get one, or maybe you can get a couple more per shop, you know, if you get a special voucher, it creates a reason to play again and again and again. You just want to see all the things that has to offer. You want to see how far you can push the game, and then eventually what that concluded for me was playing a run where I wanted to get every single one of those vouchers in one run, which it was difficult. It was actually a really fun challenge. But again, Betmma has a ton of other content, and I haven't played all of it, but I can highly recommend, based off of the time I've spent with the voucher packs, that it's all going to be good. It's all going to be not completely cryptid mod breaking, but still, you know, pretty out there, a pretty solid overhaul of the game. And lastly, in the overhaul mods, we have Ortalab. I was introduced to Ortalab by one of its creators, Crimson Heart. This was, I think, the first Balatro mod I ever played, and it adds a tons of jokers. And I would say it's kind of similar to Betmma, where it's not quite vanilla adjacent. It is still an overhaul, but it is pretty grounded, I feel like, in the rules that Local Thunk laid out for the game. I would argue, out of these overhaul mods, probably the most grounded in the classic Joker rules that Thunk made. But granted, that's when I played it. I haven't played it in a couple months. But recently, they've added even more content. There's tons of new jokers, tons of new decks. There's new blinds. There's a new consumable type Zodiac, which I find very intriguing, where you get a temporary buff to hands, but a permanent deck manipulation. I think it was a really smart idea. I think it was a really interesting way to add a new consumable to the game. So Crimson Heart and Irmal, I know they're two of the leads on that, and they do a fantastic job of, I think, similar to Pokermon, adding new things that could really fit in Balatro, but still making it feel like a Balatro experience. It's not blowing it out of the water and making it a whole new game, maybe like a Cryptid is. Lastly, we have two mods in the vanilla adjacent category. The first one is going to be the extra credit mod made by Balatro University's Discord. This feels very much like a Balatro expansion pack. It boasts new jokers that fit right in with how the game is meant to be played, all while adding variety and fun. Again, speaking of some of my favorite runs of all time, the Ship of Thesis world record quote-unquote run. This is a joker that gives you X mult for destroying cards, but then that card gets put back into your deck, so you can't. It creates this very interesting game where it's like, oh, okay, my glass cards will never break. It seems very powerful, which it is, but as soon as you add Ship of Thesis, there's no more deck manipulation, because you cannot delete cards. I mean, you can leverage deaths to turn cards into others, but you will never be able to truly actually remove a card from the deck. So in that way, for a game-breaking joker, I still think it's kind of balanced, and that's the craziest joker out of them all. I think there's a lot of fun to be had here. And in both of these mods that we're going to talk about, I think if you're waiting for the Balatro update, especially if you're watching this before it comes out, and you just want your hands on some new content that feels like Local Thunk made it, I highly recommend the Extra Credit mod. And lastly is the Cosmos mod packs. This was worked on by a whole community of people. However, one of the leads, Nito, is one of my favorite people in the Balatro community. She's the artist responsible for my emotes after all, and she does a fantastic job with every project she touches. The Cosmos mod pack was no different. I got my hands on the holiday theme pack. I was privileged enough to try it out before many other people were. Me and a handful of other creators like Murphy, Raffle, and Doctor were able to try it out, and I have to say, it rivals Extra Credit in every sense of the word. It is another almost perfect vanilla Adjscent mod. It sticks to a lot of the core principles Thunk has when making jokers. The holiday packs fit. It felt like it I have to say, it just truly felt like I was playing a Balatro expansion pack. And the themes, the holiday themes that were included throughout the jokers in the game, the Santa, the milk and cookies joker, they were just so well done. The art, of course, this being led by a fantastic pixel artist, you were going to see fantastic art. But I actually think the joker mechanics themselves were my favorite part. There's a little bouncing that they're currently working on, but all in all, I think the abilities on the jokers were perfect. They were perfect to add just a little bit of flavor to the game, and I know that Cosmos is going to add more joker packs, if you will, and then you'll be able to select what jokers you actually want to play with in your run. Same thing with Extra Credit. So if you're looking for that vanilla Adjscent experience, if you don't really want to overhaul the whole game, if you just want like new content because it feels like you need a little bit of freshness to your average Balatro playthrough, Extra Credit mod, Cosmos mod pack, I highly recommend. And that's going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for hearing me out on 10 mods I think you should try out. And like I said, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of other great, talented, amazing mod creations in the Discord made by incredible people. Go check those out as well, but I just want to highlight these 10. That's going to be it. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.